Warm greetings of the day to all my learners. This is Liju ma'am from TIS with the explanation of the poem How is My Coal by Simon Barraclough from your English coursebook Living English 8. Before moving on to the poem, let us talk about the poet Simon Barraclough. He is a London based writer, copy editor, copywriter, poet, tutor, and mentor with an interest in crossovers between poetry and science. He was a poet in residence at UCL's Mullard Space Science Laboratory, MSSL. He is the author and editor of several books as well as widely published commissioned and broadcast poet. Some of his collections include Los Alamos, Mon Amour, Bonjour Tetris, Neptune Blue, and Sunspots. Let us look into a brief introduction about the poem How is My Coal? It is a monologue by the earth in which we human beings are the intended and obvious audience. Styled in an informal style, each stanza talks about one source of energy. The poem is a fairly straightforward warning as well as a call to action. It is meant to bridge the gap between our knowledge of energy sources and our reluctance to adopt sustainable practices. It reminds us of realities and gently prompts us to alter our behavior. So, we are going to read and learn about a thought provoking poem that appeals to both our intellect and emotion. So, let's look into the poem in detail, stanza wise. How is my coal getting on? I set as much aside for you as I could. Don't use it all at once. It might come in handy one day. In stanza 1, Earth is asking us, humans, about the reserves of coal and telling us not to use them all up. Moving on to the second stanza. How is my oil faring? It keeps best underground in the dark, doesn't do so well in the light. Don't let it spoil. The second stanza talks about how petroleum is best left untouched underground, implying that it is easily inflammable and therefore best left and not used much. Moving on, how is the wind blowing? I try to keep it moving, keep it on the muscle, keep the pressure on, make it hustle. The third stanza says that the earth tries to keep the wind moving, indicating that its energy can be harnessed. Very true. Wind energy available to be harnessed. In the fourth stanza, we talk about yet another energy. Let's look into that. Any breaking news on wave power? I have hired an intern to handle the oceans. If we could make some ripples, get more converts, that would be swell. The fourth stanza has Earth inquiring if we have been able to exploit wave power and how it would be great if more of us could convert to wave energy. Earth also says It has hired an intern to help us, perhaps implying that research on wave energy is already underway. Moving on to the last stanza, where the poet talks about the most important of all the renewable sources of energy. Yes, the solar energy. I assume you are using solar, right? This other stuff's for backup in case there is a rainy day for me in space. The fifth stanza says that we should use solar energy because the other sources of energy are only meant as a backup for the cloudy days, hinting at the fact that the sun is an inexhaustible source of energy and can be tapped daily except on days that sun doesn't shine. Very important message there, listeners, that the need of the hour is to tap, harness the sustainable sources of energy. Neglecting clean energy sources such as solar, wind can result in blackouts, increased power bills, and will take a heavy toll on our efforts to reduce greenhouse gases. Hence, recognize and adopt sustainable source of energy. So, a very important message there given by the poet that there is an urgent need to shift our priorities from the non renewable sources of energy to renewable sources of energy or the sustainable sources of energy. Needless to remind you all that the future of our children, future of our planet, our future is in our hands. That's why renewable sources of energy matter. So, the need of the hour, learners, is to go green. On that positive note, I, Liju Susan Thomas, TGT English from TIS, sign off. Thank you and happy learning to all.